much as a 5-second tack nap in the last 72 hours. We laid flat in the swaying brush atop jagged stone and spindly vines, as still as one could be considering the foreboding yet majestic world around us. Our firing position only divulged to the flying insects and protesting ants reordering marching orders over our quiescent limbs. It was our most promised hide in weeks, where the foothills of the Hindu Kush Mountains flowed into an unmapped rocky pass that bottlenecks 1,700 meters downslope. Wave after wave of rolling thunder reverberated the Shahikut Valley west of us, and the rumbles bore down like a falling curtain at the edge of the world, shaking loose the high ice atop the peaks. Teetering rocks, sand, and an occasional kiss of snow deluged the cliff face with each tremor. Fire-breathing wrath of the Stratofortress, or, affectionately, the kiss of the B-52. And if intel was correct, as it was the whereabouts of this pass, we were bound to encounter retreating Al-Qaeda forces. My body ached, setting and resetting positions. Another click east, another steep climb up the rugged mountain, avoiding villagers along the lower foothills, retreating civilians and the occasional nomadic pastoralists. The wind whispered a thick, icy breath that shivered a warning bell in me. Though the distance screamed with the unbridled onslaught of man's nature at its worst, it juxtaposed nature's eerie silence, enshrouding us, observing, judging, watching us. Scott held steady, his scope at my shoulder, with an occasional overwatch of our flanks. Our backs was to a wall of rock with only one very narrow path that led to higher elevations. Our field of fire was narrow, which for us was perfect, but it also meant I was locked in place. We nested between two hills and right down the center a bush that we both nicknamed Oscar the Grouch. That would be the closest we could call for fire if we were overwhelmed or ambushed by enemy forces, a call we hoped to never make, a call signifying our mission had failed. "You smell that?" Scott whispered of the rotting stench being carried upon a downdraft. "That's new." Immediately an uneasiness filled the air. I felt we were no longer hidden, but the focal point of the whole ridgeline. I lifted my eyes towards the snow-capped peaks around us. Quiet, distant, withholding its ancient secrets. A loud, thundering volley from above. The earth moved violently beneath us. The curtain was closing rapidly, which meant Al-Qaeda was close. "That was too fucking close," I said, searching the terrain, near and far, with my rifle scope and naked eye. A guttural roar echoed in mountaintops and echoed the narrow pass. "What the fuck was that?" I whispered to Scott, whose eyes were wide and still. "That's not an animal I've ever heard before," Scott said, remaining absolutely still. In moments, rocks and sand, followed by snow, rained down around us. Then, a whole tree to our flank. What the fuck? After the unexplained incident, the rest of the morning was as quiet as a graveyard. In the early evening, the stillness rippled with the continual drumming of aerial bombardment. I requested Scott to radio in our sit-rep, but his comms were down. I reached for the radio and heard only broken, indecipherable traffic. As the bombing continued, the unearthly howl returned. The clefts and chasms, the snowcaps and the foothills, vociferating in protest, the lamentable callousness of the unknown god raining down fire and ear-splitting thunder. Scott shot me an anxious glance. An undeniable crackle of muffled gunshots emanated in the distance. Small arms fire no more than a click away. AK-47s. "Shit, where's that coming from?" I asked. "Up and over that ridge would be my guess." Scott motioned to the rouged land over our shoulders in the snow-capped elevation. "We gotta get eyes on." From my cargo pocket, I pulled out my folded map, observing the jagged contour lines and unknown spaces. We were headed to no man's land. The rifle fire was erratic, followed by brief respites. The mountains rumbled and moaned as a blast of snow cascaded the mountainside, creating shapely mist that lifted in an ethereal wander. Ascending a narrow pathway, we held desperately a steep wall of rock that declined into a mist-veiled abyss. The unstable snowpack high above us gave way. First, the soft powder whisked the air until sheets of ice cascaded the mountainside in full fury. We hugged a cliff wall, squeezing, hoping, praying, umbrellaed by the grace of a formation of jutting rock. What were we doing? What was I doing? Our mission was simple. Now I felt we were biting off more than we could chew, advancing blindly into a world angels are forbidden to tread. The slope plateaued, and atop the plateau a curtain of mist oscillated, but as my eyes focused I made out a distant woodland and the surrounding cavernous mountainside leading upward. No matter how high you climbed, there was always another peak. The higher ridgeline took on a shape of three hooded figures standing shoulder to shoulder. Judges. Large stones were scattered about, too heavy for a dozen men. We both bear-crawled from stone to stone, stopping after each movement to take in the unsettling silence. If Al-Qaeda was here, we had to be ready. Scott attempted to require radio comms, but to no avail. Static. Nothing but fucking static, Scott whispered angrily. An approaching silhouette appeared and reappeared in the undulating mist. I steadied my rifle crosshairs center mass. The figure's details were made clear. It was a boy no older than 7 or 8. What became more apparent was stains of blood throughout his body. His eyes were distant, lost, his face expressionless. The boy continued right by us in an hypnotic-like state, and disappearing again in the mist behind us to God knows where. Too many shadowy angles and unknowns for my liking. We bounded to the trees, my rifle and Scott's carbine frantically clearing the foreboding world around us. It was my hope the mist in the trees concealed us from enemy fire. A relationship. We found the road, Emlaaq was howls in the distance. We initiated a low crawl through the dark foliage, and finding the other side of the trees, I stretched my rifle ahead. Nothing prepared me for what I saw. "What the hell?" Scott whispered in horror. Bodies, and parts of bodies. A sea of limbs, spinal cords, heads, and the headless. Unknown human anatomy, both skeletal and fleshed. Weapons, both crude and conventional, blade and barrel. The young and the old butchered in this place. Unknown thousands, a slaughtering field. Fresh blood splattered the red-stained trees and about the rocks and vegetation. Scarlet stains strewn upon the patches of fallen snow. A sightless face gaped at us from the mound of human corpses. We were both trampling trespassers in subsequent slaughter. "We have got to get comms ASAP," I said to Scott, who, like me, was at piss-pants level of scared shitless. I'm sure my face was as pale and lost as his. It felt like every breath was panting. I just want to go home. I just want to go home. I felt like a coward. Maybe I was. Terrified. This shit was unreal. Perdition. A level of hell I didn't know existed. "You hear that?" Scott asked, scanning far and near. A man was groaning in the gloom. Beyond the edge of the woods, 50 yards away, in a clearing, a local man, villager perhaps, was crawling out from a cave. Bruised, cut, and swollen, blood peppered his face. He saw us. I set my sight to his forehead. Who was he? Friendly? Enemy? It was as if he looked into my eyes and wanted to die. He was quivering with fear, and it wasn't because of the skinny, pale prick aiming a rifle at him. The trees beyond the man shook and swayed violently, a cacophony of snapping timber and collapsing branches. It wasn't the wind or another avalanche. Something was bounding toward the clearing, something gigantic. That god-awful roar we heard in the foothills was close. My body froze. Petrified, mind lost in the jostling of enormous trees and falling woodline. Heavy footsteps thundered the soft earth. Exploding out of the trees and raining timber, foliage, and splinters was a being of fantasy and myth, roaring in fury. It was a creature of 15 to 20 feet, with red hair, with Neanderthal-like features. It ran full upon the crawling man, who was now reaching out to me for help. In the monster's right hand,
a spear of about 12 feet. The creature raised the spear high over the man to impale. Before I could register a clear thought or any tactical plan, my finger was pressed tightly at the rear of the trigger well. I don't even know if I had a good sight picture. I just leveled my rifle and shot at the beast's massive head. The creature stumbled a bit, eyes locked in our direction, growling in protest. I quickly raised my crosshairs to his face. Yet before I could fire my second round, 3 men with various wounds erupted from behind the beast, firing their AKs. They didn't aim, nor cared to aim, shooting in abject fear at the colossal creature before them. The giant, in one agile bound, was atop one of the gunmen, and in a lightning-quick maneuver, backhanded the man into the trunk of a nearby tree with a horrific crunch, breaking bones. Then the beast took its spear and plunged another gunman through his left shoulder, out the stomach, into his right thigh, and into the ground.
Blood erupted with a sickening gurgle. The other gunman frozen in place, his urine showing through his tunic as the monster patiently advanced upon him. It lifted and twisted the man at chest level, relieving head from body in a scarlet explosion of flesh, entrails, and bone. I could not find the words in me. We needed to get down the fucking mountain, but I couldn't. I doubt my legs would obey. All we could do is watch and await our turn. The beast scanned for the first man who crawled out, but he was gone. To my surprise, the man who was knocked into the tree 50 yards from us was still breathing. His wheezing whistled out his nose, gurgling the blood oozing out his mouth. The lumbering mammoth turned his attention towards the dying damned. I managed to punch Scott at my side. We crawled backwards, slowly, hoping the beast had forgotten he was in a battle with more man than he's killed. A revolting, wet crunch and blood showered the ground. He was eating them. He was fucking eating them. The canopy darkened as we returned to the shadows, with quivering legs and racing hearts. We navigated wordlessly the terrain back toward the mountain edge. The earth shook beneath us, and the air around us dissipated. The trees swayed, and standing over us was the behemoth. Immediately, we both opened fire and yelled with the last ounce of courage we could muster. The beast wrenched in pain, lifting its arms defensively to cover its face. "Run!" I yelled to Scott. A thick wood stalled and slowed the beast enough for us to get a few yards of distance as we zigzagged apart. A heavy whoosh filled my ear. I instinctively dived towards the ground. A loud, a horrific snap, and Scott hung brokenly against the tree, pierced through by the great spear. The beast reached for the spear, but instead of pulling the spear out, it looked at me and twisted the spear and pushing it through the tree that crepitated before falling over. It knew. It had seen this many times before. It knew I was going to not leave him behind and charge it, a trait of all men in battle. I couldn't control it. I was a rabid dog firing my rifle and sprinting towards it. Looking into its eyes, screaming, I only saw calculated calm and ancient savagery. With one strike, I was sent flying, but not into a tree. I was out of the woods and descending down the mountainside. I struck the fallen snow, tumbling out of control, head over heels, over and over again. I could still hear the giant's roar, feel the power of its bellow that rippled through me. I reached for my radio, hearing a voice on the other side of the squelch. "Oscar the Grouch! Oscar the Grouch!" I yelled before tumbling again down and down the foothills. I saw the bush getting closer and closer. My legs were broken. My arms were broken. A couple of ribs snapped. I landed on my back, looking up into the misty sky, unable to move. I was done. I was broken. In moments, there was the massive beast darkening the sky and raising both fists to cave my chest in. Then I saw the light, a searing whistle. My Redeemer drew nigh. I'm finally getting that sleep, after all.